Well, it looks like things may be looking up. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago held a press conference yesterday, that would be Saturday, and he made some new announcements concerning the different COVID measures that we're having currently in Trinidad and different adjustments to these measures. Some of the main points being that, well, the borders will be reopening soon. That would be some good news to the people who would like to fly. Not necessarily good news to the Caribbean Airlines staff that are already being laid off. I saw a report saying that it's going to be about half of the pilots being laid off. If so, that's quite a hit. To be plain and honest with you, I didn't watch the press conference. I kind of losing patience watching some of these press conferences. You'd watch 40 minutes of a press conference to really see 5 minutes of information. It's like you ever dealt with bhaji, the grass you cook and try to get some food out of. You'd collect this much bhaji, whether it is dasheen bhaji or spinach bhaji, and you cook it down and it end up to this much in the pot. That's what the news conference feels like. This much time cooked down to really and truly 5 minutes worth of information, and it feels like you're wasting time. On the note of bhaji, just by the way, it's only as I got older I recognized that really and truly just about everything is bhaji. When I was younger, I had this thought that bhaji was a specific plant. When I hear older people say the word bhaji, I'm thinking that it's a specific plant, and when you get this bhaji leaf, you make it into this bhaji food business. It's only as I got older and I talking to some older ladies and thing, and you recognize that just about everything is bhaji. What is bhaji? Really and truly, the dependent on what bhaji is how much money you have in your bank account. According to how much you're struggling at a specific time is according to where that line between what is bhaji and what is bush, that line kind of moves a bit. But either way, the borders are set to open. Ready, set, travel. TNT borders to open on July 17th. Trinidad and Tobago's borders will reopen on July 17th. However, there will be restrictions to entry. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley made the announcement at a media conference at the Diplomatic Centre, St. Anne's on Saturday. He said three categories, make sure I have up the right amount of fingers. He said three categories of people are being looked at. These include category 1, fully vaccinated citizens or legal residents of TNT. Category 2, unvaccinated citizens or legal residents of TNT, and category 3, other persons unvaccinated. The Prime Minister outlined the details about the three categories of people. He disclosed that non-nationals who are unvaccinated will not be allowed to enter the country at this time. However, nationals of TNT who are fully vaccinated will be allowed to enter having shown proof of a negative PCR test 72 hours or less before arrival. These citizens will not be required to quarantine. Children with vaccinated parents will also be allowed to go home. A citizen who is not vaccinated, however, must go into state-supervised quarantine for 14 days. These individuals must also show a negative PCR test no older than 72 hours. Dr. Rowley added that a digitalized system in the form of an app will be used to allow people to submit their personal information. I am pretty sure that one, if that bit of information reaches to the more conspiratorial minds, that may cause a bit of problems. It's the vaccine information app, and we'll see how that rolls out. I don't think it would be anything really controversial, but we'd see how it goes. Anything could create a controversy if given the chance to. And this itself is creating some controversy. The fact that the borders are reopening while we're seeing restaurants and other small businesses are still being told that they must remain closed. So you could ask yourself, if we're talking about obeying the science and we're making decisions based on scientific data and on the knowledge that we have. So based on the science and what we know about the coronavirus COVID-19, what part of that science tells you that the airport's reopening is safer than the restaurant's reopening? And that's a legitimate question. I mean, I understand on the side of the economy that the reopening of the airport could be more important in terms of getting an economy going and getting people back moving. People moving has a lot to do with getting the economy back moving also, and that's understandable from the economical side viewpoint. I could understand there may be an argument that the borders and the airport by extension may be more important, but the argument that they're saying that they are using to keep the businesses closed is a health and science standpoint, a health and science viewpoint. So is it an economical standpoint that you're using to reopen the airport, but using a health viewpoint to keep the businesses closed? Because from an economical standpoint, the business owners and the workers and the employees and the people who own their own businesses, the sole traders who are currently stuck at home, they would, from an economical standpoint, they would see it as being an economic priority to open their sectors too. And speaking of sectors that are reopening and obeying the science, I saw in the announcement that was made that the Prime Minister is also saying that the construction sector is going to reopen. And that's great. There are many construction workers who are home right now. They didn't collect some of the earlier grants, so they've been home without a salary. So that's exciting news. But there's a little interesting caveat to make that a little less exciting. Government construction to resume on July 5th. Government construction will resume on July 5th. Private sector construction, however, will have to wait a little longer. This announcement came today from Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley during a media briefing this afternoon. That was yesterday. Again, if we're obeying the science, is it that the government construction has some improved ventilation methods when they are on their construction projects? Or is it that government construction workers are able to work better socially distanced? What exactly is the scientific reasoning behind allowing government construction to reopen but private construction cannot? That just it continues along the lines where you're seeing in Trinidad. It seems like they punish the private sector and punish the entrepreneurs and allow sometimes the public sector, and really and truly that doesn't benefit the public sector workers and the employees within the public sector and these state companies. It doesn't benefit anyone, but it just abuses the private sector. So apparently the science says that government construction spreads COVID less than private construction. Okay, that's the science that says that, right? I did a contemplation recently on poverty and the differences between absolute poverty and relative poverty. I mean, that could get really academic and it could feel like you're just sitting in a social studies class, but these things have real world impacts. So one of the things that is noted when you're looking at poverty, the assumption that poor people do crime is not true. Absolute poverty isn't necessarily a good predictor of crime. Absolute poverty meaning just how much money or how much resources people get, totally not relative to anything, how much resources you get on a whole. So, absolute poverty. What is a predictor of crime? Something called the Gini coefficient that measures wealth inequality. So, even if the poorest person in a country isn't that poor, if they are that much poorer than the wealthiest person in a country, you're risking the safety and stability of your country if you allow these things to fester. And we're already seeing in Trinidad, you're hearing multiple people speaking and you're hearing some discontent brewing among some people, and regularly now you're seeing statuses talking about we must do something and the people need to stand up. And I'm not sure all the people that are saying that mean that totally in a figurative sense. We could be tempted as a nation to believe that because things have been so normal and calm and safe with us and peaceful and stable, that is the way it's always going to remain. But that is what you call a normalcy bias. You are biased towards the things always being as they were before. But things do change and disasters do happen and some strange things can happen in your country also. We're seeing that this discontent is brewing. If we look at the opposition, we're seeing that the opposition may not necessarily always be an accurate gauge of exactly where the discontent may be, because the opposition can seem to be perpetually discontent, and okay, granted, that is part of the job of being in the opposition, but you could see some of the things they're saying, and you could see that some of these negative mindsets are spreading further and further. UNC, is the Rowley government greedy or needy. And that is a statement from the opposition where they went in on the ruling People's National Movement over what they consider as their heartlessness through some of the things that are happening in this pandemic. One of the things that they particularly took to task was a statement made by a government minister where she spoke of some people in one of the lines lined up for hampers, lined up quite some time, and she spoke of them as being greedy. Now, the statement has to be understood in context also. I don't think that this politician, thinking through their words, planned to say something that insinuates that needy people genuinely in need, are greedy. But what she was intending to point out was that when you're seeing these long lines waiting on the hampers, some of the people in the line are there just for greed's sake, not that they need what is in the hamper. And that's an obvious truth, really and truly. But being that that is an obvious truth, I think that makes it less needed to be said. Of course, there may be some greedy people in the lines, but the fact is that there are a lot of needy people also. So if you're trying to speak to that, maybe some tact, T-A-C-T, that word tact, may be necessary. I understand greedy and needy rhymes and it makes for a catchy statement, but when you're speaking that out to your populace, that doesn't sound good, because yes, you understand that you're trying to differentiate between the two different groups of people. But when the message goes out and people see greedy and needy next to each other, they are going to collate the two. And what may have been meant to be just an explanation of why the lines may have been so long, according to your view, has turned into something that seems like a look down on the lower classes of people that are struggling and suffering. I saw some people posted the same minister that made that statement about greedy and needy and posted her next to her luxury vehicle, and you could understand the picture that some people see. I am lining up in a line trying to get food because I cannot work and I'm struggling, and you are driving in a luxury vehicle and saying that some of these people in this line aren't even there because they need to be. Well, your luxury vehicle isn't needed either, but you're still receiving your salary. So maybe when we're talking about needy and greedy, you could not be greedy and sell your luxury vehicle and give it to the needy if we're talking about needy and greedy. You understand the poor way that sounds to the public and to people that are struggling already? That whole hamper drive was closed soon after its opening because it was just inundated with too many people. Okay, you could want to assume how many of them were greedy, but I'd also assume that a large portion of them were needy, and a large portion of them went away without getting any hampers. I believe that the hamper giveaway is going to continue today and some other days too, so hopefully all those in need would be able to get those needs met, and hopefully we could see the leaving of this pandemic soon. As of now, what we do see, our borders are reopening and the government construction sector, not you all private people, you all stay home and find money where you all find money. The government construction sector is reopening. As usual, comment and tell me what you think about the topics I've spoken about. And if you like the video, please do click that like button. And if you aren't subscribed yet also, do subscribe. And I'll see you again tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the other video.
Feel the music, rising with the time.